Section 1.4, Rewriting Formulas and Equations. So a formula is simply an equation that relates two or more quantities, and those quantities are usually represented by variables. Some common formulas would be the distance formula or an area formula. To solve for a variable simply means to rewrite the equation to an equivalent form, so still using your order of operations and equation solving skills, but you're going to rewrite it in which one of the variables is on one side of the equation and does not appear on the other side. So this first problem, solve the formula d equals RT for t. This is the distance formula. Distance equals rate times time. So to solve this for t, we have to undo whatever's being done to t. Well, we're simply multiplying t by r, so to undo multiplication means we need to divide both sides by r. R over r is 1, so we're left with t equals, and we get d over r. Now find the time it takes to travel 312 miles at a rate of 48 miles per hour. So now we could have used this original formula and plugged in what we knew, but now it's asking us for the time, and we already have our formula solved for time. So t equals, our distance is 312 miles, and our rate is 48 miles per hour. When we divide this out, 312 divided by 48 is 6.5, and again, it's a word problem, and we're dealing with miles per hour, so this is 6.5 hours is how long it would take us to travel. Again, make sure you have a label on all your answers for word problems. Solve the area formula for b sub 2. This hopefully is recognizable as the area of a trapezoid, and we're going to solve this for b sub 2. So when I rewrote this, the first thing I did, since we're multiplying the parentheses by the 1/2 and the h, I just put those together. And so now we need to undo what's being done to b sub 2. So we can't undo the addition here before we undo what's being multiplied. So we would want to divide by 1/2, but again remember that dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2, so we're going to multiply both sides by 2. So we get 2a, the 1/2 times 2 is 1, equals h times b sub 1 plus b sub 2. Now we need to divide both sides by the h because again, we can't undo and get down to that b sub 2 until we get rid of this multiplication. So we're going to divide by h. Again, those h's cancel, and we get 2a over h equals b sub 1 plus b sub 2. And now hopefully you see that all we have to do is subtract from both sides b sub 1. So b sub 2 equals 2a over h minus b sub 1. These next few problems are probably the most useful as far as why we're going to be using this section most frequently. When we have an equation with x and y, we're often going to need to solve that equation for y. We're going to get this into y-intercept, y equals mx plus b form. When you are doing your homework, make sure you realize that it says solve for y, then find y when x equals -5. I realize that you could take this -5 and plug it in for the x right there, and then solve that for y. But the first thing we need to do is solve this equation for y. So we need to undo whatever's being done to y. Again, we can't undo that 3, get rid of that 3, before we undo this 5x. So we need to subtract 5x from both sides. To get us in the habit of getting things in slope-intercept form, I'm going to write this as 3y equals -5x plus 8. And now we're multiplying 3y by 3, so we need to divide both sides by 3. Remember, on this side we need to divide both terms, so we're going to take the -5 divided by 3, and that's my coefficient of x, and then 8 divided by 3. You don't have to put these in decimals. In fact, it's often easier and lends itself to fewer mistakes if you just leave them as fractions. Now it says to find y when x equals negative 5. And so now we're just going to use this equation, y equals negative 5/3 x, except we're going to plug negative 5 in for the x, plus 8/3. And now we're just going to do order of operations. We need to multiply. Negative 5/3 times negative 5 over 1. Multiplying numerator times numerator, we get 25. Denominator times denominator is thirds, plus 8/3. And now we have two fractions with a common denominator. 25/3 plus 8/3 is 33/3, which simplifies to 11. So when x equals negative 5, y equals 11. If you haven't already, I would like you to pause the video right now and try to do this problem, solve it for y, and then find y when x equals 2, and then come back and see if you get the right answer. And I'll go through this. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract the 3x. So we're going to get 2y equals negative 3x plus 12. And now to get y by itself, we need to undo that multiplication of 2, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. Again, dividing both terms by that 2, we get negative 3/2 x plus 12/2, but 12/2 is 6. The second part, then find y when x equals 2. So again, y equals negative 3/2, plugging in 2 for x, plus 6. Well, 2 over 1 cancels with the 2 on the denominator, so we get y equals negative 3 plus 6, and y equals 3. So y equals 3 when x equals 2. Again, we're solving for y, and then we're finding y when x equals 3. But in this problem we have 2y. I mean, y is there twice. And we need to get it so it's just 1y equals. We can't add these because 2xy and 5y aren't like terms, because the 2xy has an x, the 5y doesn't. So what can we do? Well, if you recall, we could use the distributive property backwards, or we can factor out a y. Now if we think about this, if we take a y out, in other words, y times what would give me 2xy? Well, that would be 2x. And y times what would give me a minus 5y? Well, that would be minus 5. And that equals 8. And we can check this. If you were to multiply this back in, y times 2x is 2xy. Y times a negative 5 gives me negative 5y. And now again, we need to get y by itself. We're multiplying y by 2x minus 5, so we just need to divide both sides by 2x minus 5. This whole factor cancels, so y equals 8 over 2x minus 5. Now, unlike those problems we were doing previously, we cannot break this up into two distinct terms. We must leave it in this form. So now the second part, find y when x equals 3. Again, we're just plugging in 3 for x. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can go ahead and get the right answer. So you hopefully got that y equals 8 when x equals 3. Again, this problem is similar to the last one, so I would encourage you to pause the video and attempt to do this one on your own. So again, we're going to, since we have two y's on the left-hand side, we need to factor out or use the distributive property backwards. So if I take that y out of both terms, I would be left with, in my parentheses, 4 minus x equals 28. And again, I'm going to divide both sides by what y is being multiplied by. This whole factor cancels, and I end up with y equals 28 over 4 minus x. Again, when I plug in 2, y equals 28 over 4 minus 2. So y equals 28 over 2, or y equals 14. A campus bookstore sells t-shirts for $15 each and sweatshirts for $22 each. Write an equation for the bookstore's revenue R from selling T number of t-shirts and S the number of sweatshirts. Well, revenue is simply their income. So their revenue is going to equal the number of t-shirts times the price plus the number of sweatshirts times the price. So my revenue, well, the price of the t-shirts is $15 and I'm selling T of those, plus the price of the sweatshirts is $22 each and I'm going to sell S of those. So this would be the equation for the amount of revenue that the bookstore would bring in. In order for the bookstore to have $6,660 in revenue for the fall semester, how many t-shirts must be sold if 150 sweatshirts are sold? Well, we've got 3 variables here, and we've got numbers for 2 of them. So my revenue is $6,660, so plugging that in for R. 15 times, I still need, it's asking how many t-shirts, so my t is going to stay a variable, plus 22 times, it's telling me that I'm selling 150 sweatshirts. And now this is just a simple equation to solve. 6,660 equals 15t plus 3,300. Subtract 3,300 from both sides, because remember we're trying to get the t by itself. So we're going to get 3,360 equals 15t. I can't show my work, I've run out of room, but dividing both sides by 15, we're going to get that t equals 224. 224 what? We're dealing with a word problem. 224 t-shirts. Be aware that there's a list of common formulas on page 26 in your book. If the formula that you need is not there, please make sure that you make the use of the index in your book. There might be some problems in your homework that's asking you to deal with some formulas, so you might need to look up what some of those formulas are. Also, remember to revisit the website and fill out the form. And again, please come to class ready to ask questions. I love to answer your questions.